history waiting to be discovered. At Rare Coins, we uncover the real value, the truth behind the hype, and the coins collectors would do anything to own. Welcome to Rare Coins. The 1941 Jefferson Nickel with the DDO001 variety is one of those hidden treasures in the series. On the surface, the regular 1941 is already an important date, with about 43 million minted, which sounds high until you remember that it's a West Coast San Francisco strike from the early 40s, when dies wore quickly and strike quality suffered. But once you add the double die obverse, things change dramatically. This variety is known for strong doubling on the date, the motto, and especially liberty. It's visible without a microscope on well-preserved examples, which makes it popular with variety collectors. Now let's start with the numbers. Everyone wants to know the highest auction prices. The most dramatic sales have happened in the higher mint state levels. In MS66 full steps, examples of the 1941 DDO have sold for $8,000 to $12,000, depending on eye appeal and strike quality. Even at MS65 FS, you're looking at $2,500 to $3,000. Without the full steps designation, mint state coins still command strong premiums. An MS65 might bring $400 to $700, and MS64 examples are often in the $150 to $250 range. Drop down into circulated grades and you'll still find premiums. Finer VF pieces might sell for $20 to $50, and higher AU grades can stretch into the $100 to $200 range. This is one of those varieties where the market is strong across all levels, because the doubling is bold, enough to attract new collectors, but scarce enough to drive serious bidding in top grades. The real challenge, as with so many San Francisco coins of this era, is the strike. 1941 nickels are notorious for being softly struck, especially on Monticello steps. Full steps coins, already rare for the regular issue, become nearly elusive when you demand the DDO001 variety. That's why the step designation drives such a huge jump in value. Collectors chasing registry sets know that adding a full steps DDO01 isn't just filling a slot, it's competing at the highest levels of rarity. When you look closer at the variety itself, the doubling is what makes it so attractive. The 1941 date shows strong separation, with the 1 being especially clear. The letters in Liberty and parts of In God We Trust also display pronounced doubling. Unlike some varieties where you need magnification, this one pops to the naked eye under the right light, which is why it has earned such a following among error and variety specialists. It's cataloged as FS101 in the 5 Stanton system, which further cements its status as a major recognized variety, not just a minor curiosity. Let's move through the grades to get a better feel for the market. In Gooder VG, you'll see prices in the $20 to $30 range, sometimes a little more if the doubling is bold and easily seen. Fine to very fine examples can bring $40 to $70. By the time you get to extremely fine, the value jumps closer to $100, and AU coins often cross into the $150 to $200 zone. Mint state examples are where the serious premiums begin. MS60 to MS62 coins trade in the $200 to $400 range. MS63 pushes toward $400 to $600. MS64, depending on luster and strike, sells for $150 to $250 without steps, but with steps it can multiply in value quickly. MS65 is where collectors really start to pay attention, about $400 to $700 without steps, but over $2,500 if it has full steps. And then at the top, MS66 full steps, you're into $8,000 to $12,000 territory, with a handful of coins known at that level. Historically, this coin sits at an interesting moment. The year 1941 was a turning point for America. The U.S. was still technically neutral in the Second World War, but the attack on Pearl Harbor would come in December of that year. Just 2 years later, nickel production would shift to the silver alloy, war nickels of 1942-45, as nickel was needed for the war effort. That makes the 1941 issues the last of the pre-war alloy Jeffersons. The San Francisco Mint's role was crucial, supplying coinage to the Western United States at a time when demand for circulating currency was soaring. And in that mix, one working die produced this striking double die variety, leaving us with a legacy that collectors hunt for to this day. There's also the psychology of the hunt. Collectors of Jefferson Nickels often start with the basics, completing a date and mint mark set. But when they move into varieties, the 1941 DDO01 becomes a must-have. It's bold enough to display proudly, rare enough to carry status, and dramatic enough to spark conversation. Owning one feels different than owning a common double die. You can point to it and immediately show someone why it's special.
Picture a collector at a local coin show.
Flipping through a dealer's box of nickels, they see a 1941 look closer, and notice the doubling on the date and Liberty. Suddenly what looked like a $5 coin is a $200 rarity, and if the coin has strong luster with nearly full steps, it could be worth thousands. That thrill of discovery is what keeps this variety in demand. Ultimately, the 1941 Jefferson Nickel DDO01 is about the intersection of rarity, eye appeal, and history. It's a coin that can be found in circulation grades for a couple dozen dollars, but in mint state with full steps it transforms into a five-figure prize. It connects collectors to both the artistry of double die errors and the wartime era that reshaped American coinage. So whether you're a casual variety hunter or a serious registry competitor, the 1941 DDO01 deserves attention. From $20 in low grade to $12,000. In the finest condition, it proves once again that small details can create big value, and that even a nickel can carry a story of rarity, history, and discovery. The 1943 Jefferson Nickel is one of the standout issues of the Wartime Silver series, and its value and importance come through in several ways. The highest prices for this coin are realized when you're talking about full steps mint state examples, especially those graded at the very top of the scale. At auction, the finest known 1943 with full steps has reached prices of $15,000 to $20,000, making it one of the most desirable wartime nickels for registry collectors. Even mid-range full-step coins can bring $2,000 to $5,000, depending on eye appeal and strike. For regular mint state coins without full steps, values are still strong. A typical mint state 65 will sell for around $100 to $150, and MS66 examples may reach $300 to $500. Circulated 1943 nickels are far more common, and these usually trade for $2 to $4 because of their silver content. Even a very worn example has a base value above face value, thanks to its composition of 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. The 1943 is often compared to its Philadelphia and San Francisco counterparts, but Denver's issue has always been known for slightly sharper strikes. That's one reason why full steps are more obtainable here than in some other years. Still, true gem examples with full steps remain rare, and they are the coins that command those big premiums. Collectors working on the Jefferson Nickel registry sets absolutely need them, and the competition pushes the prices higher every year. Historically, the 1943 is interesting because it was part of the second year of wartime silver production. By this point, the U.S. Mint had already fully transitioned to the silver alloy, and Denver was producing large quantities to help meet the demands of commerce. Over 15.3 million nickels were struck at Denver in 1943, making it the lowest mintage of the three mints that year. That scarcity adds to its appeal, since collectors naturally gravitate toward the lowest mintage issue in a series. You can recognize the 1943 instantly because of the large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse. This oversized D was deliberately used on all silver nickels so they could be quickly identified and removed from circulation after the war if needed. Today, that big mint mark has become symbolic of the wartime nickels as a group, and the Denver D is one of the clearest examples. One of the fascinating things about the 1943 D is how it serves as a bridge between casual collectors and advanced specialists. On the entry level, it's an inexpensive way for someone to own a silver coin from World War II. You can buy a circulated example for just a few dollars. But for the serious collector, the challenge lies in chasing perfection, flawless luster, sharp details, and those all-important full steps. That's where the thrill of the hunt comes in, and that's where the big money is. When you think about what was happening in 1943, every coin feels like a time capsule. The world was at war, resources were stretched, And even something as small as a nickel had to be reformulated. The 1943D is not just a coin, it's a piece of that history. Every time you hold one, you're holding a fragment of America's wartime economy, a small but meaningful contribution to the fight overseas. Collectors also love to compare the 1943D with other wartime nickels in terms of toning. Many Denver issues from this year have developed beautiful shades of gold, blue, or violet because of the silver content reacting with the environment. Toned examples can bring strong premiums, especially when the colors are vivid and evenly spread. Some collectors focus entirely on rainbow-toned Jeffersons, and the 1943D provides some spectacular specimens in that category. Varieties for this year are not as dramatic as the famous 1942D over horizontal D, but there are minor repunched mint mark varieties known for the 1943D. These typically sell for $25 to $100, depending on condition, and are an extra challenge for variety hunters. While they don't command the massive premiums of the earlier varieties, they do add depth to the series and make collecting even more engaging. One more reason the 1943D holds importance is its role in completing the wartime set. Collectors of Jefferson Nickels often focus on the 1942-1945 silver issues as a standalone group, since they're distinct in composition and design. In that group, the 1943D is a key because of its lower mintage. Without it, the set simply isn't complete. That alone drives steady demand year after year. Looking at the market as a whole, the 1943D has something for everyone. Beginners can pick one up cheaply and feel the history in their hands. Intermediate collectors can hunt for higher mint state coins and enjoy the challenge of finding nice luster and strike. Advanced collectors can spend years tracking down the perfect full steps, competing at the highest level for the finest known examples. That's what makes this coin such a cornerstone of the Jefferson series. At the end of the day, the 1943D Jefferson Nickel is a coin that rewards attention to detail. Whether you're examining the strike quality, the luster, the toning, or the steps on Monticello, every little detail can mean the difference between a coin worth a few dollars and one worth thousands. That's why collectors never tire of it. Every example has its own story, its own quirks, and its own place in the broader history of the wartime nickels. So the 1943D stands tall among Jefferson Nickels, combining affordability, rarity and top condition, historical importance, and collector demand. From a $2 circulated example to a $20,000 full-step masterpiece, this coin covers the full spectrum of what makes numismatics exciting. It's more than just a 5-cent piece. The 1942S Jefferson Nickel is one of those coins that instantly connects collectors to the moment when the United States was fully mobilizing for World War II. In 1942, the government made a major decision. Nickel was too valuable for the war effort to continue being used in 5-cent pieces. Nickel was needed for tanks, aircraft, weapons, and armor, so the mint had to find an alternative alloy. The result was the famous wartime composition of 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. This was the first time in U.S. history that silver was used in nickels, and the San Francisco Mint played a key role in producing them. Unlike Philadelphia, which struck both copper nickel and wartime, silver nickels in 1942, and Denver, which struck only the regular alloy, San Francisco went straight into the new composition. Every 1942S nickel is made of the silver wartime alloy, and that makes it a one-type issue. If you have a 1942S, you have a wartime silver coin. These nickels are instantly recognizable because of the large mint mark above, Monticello's dome on the reverse. For the first time, the San Francisco S appeared in such a bold and obvious spot, leaving no doubt about the mint origin. The mintage of the 1942S was just over 32 million coins, which may sound like a lot, but in comparison to other Jefferson nickels, it's a relatively modest number. This means the 1942S is scarcer than its Philadelphia counterpart and more challenging to find in high grades. Circulated examples are plentiful, and because of the silver content, even worn ones hold extra value. These coins contain about 0.056 ounces of pure silver, so their base price will always be tied to bullion. In terms of collector value, circulated 1942S nickels usually sell for $3 to $5. They're affordable for beginning Collectors and popular because of their silver content and wartime association. But once you move into mint state coins, the story changes dramatically. Average uncirculated examples start at $40 to $60, and nicer pieces with great luster can reach $100 or more. The real prizes, though, are the full-step examples. DDOs, with sharply defined steps on Monticello, is one of the keys to the wartime series. These are extremely rare, and when they do appear, they can command astonishing prices. Full-step gems regularly sell for $500 to $1,000, and top-end registry quality coins have broken $5,000 at auction. The 1942S also has some minor varieties that collectors enjoy. While not as dramatic as the 1942D over horizontal D, there are double die obverses and reverses where letters or parts of Monticello show slight doubling. These are relatively scarce and can add a nice premium, with values ranging from $50 in circulated grades to several hundred in mint state, depending on the strength of the doubling. Beyond the numbers, the 1942S carries deep historical meaning. Every one of these coins represents the moment when America's coinage adapted to the realities of war. Citizens who received these coins in change during the 1940s might not have realized they contained silver, but the large mint mark above Monticello was intentionally designed as a quick identifier. Why? Because the mint knew that after the war, these silver nickels might need to be removed from circulation, and the oversized mint mark was a way to make sorting them easy. This practical wartime feature has become one of the most distinctive hallmarks of the entire Jefferson series. Another reason collectors value the 1942S so highly is its role in completing a set. Anyone trying to build a complete Jefferson Nickel collection must include it. And because of its relatively low mintage, it is considered one of the semi-keys of the wartime issues. Unlike some later wartime dates that had mintages over 100 million, the 1942S remains much scarcer, and high-grade survivors are even more elusive. When you think about the market for these coins, it's a perfect balance of accessibility and challenge. A new collector can buy a circulated 1942S for a few dollars, while an advanced collector might spend thousands trying to secure a top full-step gem. That spread of values keeps interest strong at every level of the hobby. The wartime silver content also adds a layer of appeal for bullion buyers, who often set aside 1942S nickels just for their silver value. Holding a 1942S Jefferson Nickel is like holding a piece of wartime America in your hand. It tells the story of rationing, sacrifice, and adaptation, where even the humble 5-cent piece played a part in the national defense effort. From its bold mint mark to its silver content, it stands out as one of the most historically significant nickels ever struck. Whether you value it for its rarity, its role in history, or its potential price in high grade, the 1942S remains a cornerstone of the Jefferson series and a true treasure for collectors. The 1942D Jefferson Nickel is one of the most interesting and sought-after coins in the entire Jefferson series. And it all starts with the fact that this year, Denver struck two completely different types of nickels. First, you have the standard composition 75% copper and 25% nickel coins. And then, for the first time, the Denver Mint also struck wartime silver nickels in the new 56% copper, 35% silver, 9% manganese alloy. That makes 1942D the only year in mint where both standard alloy and wartime silver nickels were produced, which adds a layer of complexity and rarity that collectors love. The absolute highlight and most valuable variety of the 1942D is the famous D over horizontal D, Repunched Mint Mark. This error shows the D mint mark punched in sideways first, then corrected by a second upright D. The result is a dramatic, very noticeable variety that collectors chase eagerly. Prices for this coin are extremely strong. Even in circulated grades, the 1942D D over horizontal D brings $75 to $150 in mint state. It skyrockets to $2,500 to $3,000, and the finest examples with full steps have sold for $10,000 or more at auction. This makes it one of the great varieties of the Jefferson series and an essential coin for advanced variety collectors. Even without the variety, both types of 1942D nickels hold significant value. For the wartime silver type, collectors will pay $3 to $5 for circulated coins because they contain silver and have historic appeal. In mint state, wartime 1942D, coins often bring $40 to $100, with full step examples commanding much more, sometimes crossing $1,000 for the top pieces. The regular copper-nickel type is scarcer because production switched part-way through the year, and these coins were struck in much lower numbers. Circulated examples sell for $5 to $15, and mint state examples start around $60 to $100. High-grade full steps are extremely rare and can reach $2,000 to $5,000 or higher, especially for registry collectors trying to complete the set in the finest condition. Historically, 1942 was a transitional year, and the Denver Mint's role was pivotal. The decision to remove nickel from the 5-cent coin was based entirely on war needs, and Denver helped lead the way in producing the new alloy. What makes the 1942D stand out is that it represents both the end of one era and the beginning of another. The copper-nickel issues are the last of the pre-war Jefferson Nickels, while the silver issues are the very first wartime nickels ever struck in Denver. For a collector, having both types is essential to tell the full story. Design-wise, the wartime 1942D coins are immediately recognizable by the large D mint mark placed above Monticello on the reverse. This oversized mint mark was introduced so that the mint could easily pull silver, nickels out of circulation later if needed. By contrast, the regular copper-nickel 1942D coins have the smaller mint mark to the right of Monticello, which had been the standard placement since the series began in 1938. This difference makes it very easy to tell the two types apart. Because of these differences, the 1942D coins attract several different kinds of collectors. Type collectors want both versions for completeness. Variety hunters chase the D over horizontal. D registry collectors are after the elusive full-step coins, and silver stackers hold the wartime type for bullion. This wide range of interest helps keep demand strong across the board. When we think about the market for 1942D nickels, it's really a spectrum. At the low end, you can find a circulated wartime example for a few dollars. At the high end, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars for the rarest D over horizontal D with full steps. That spread makes the coin exciting for all levels of the hobby, from beginners to elite specialists. It's also worth mentioning that the 1942D has become one of the most talked about Jefferson Nickels because of how clear its varieties are. The D over horizontal D is bold, dramatic, and leaves no doubt when you see it under magnification. Collectors love varieties that jump out, and this one is instantly recognizable. It's one of those coins that can really spark excitement in a collection. For history lovers, the 1942D carries a heavy weight. Every coin minted in that year reflects a country that was changing overnight, shifting its industries, materials, and even coinage to fight a global war. A 1942D nickel is more than just a 5-cent piece. It's a symbol of sacrifice, adaptation, and resilience. Whether you're holding the regular alloy or the silver version, you're holding a small piece of the war effort. The Denver Mint produced just over 13 million of the copper-nickel type and about 46 million of the wartime silver type. Those numbers alone explain why the copper-nickel version is much scarcer, especially in high grades. It's also why the 1942D is such an intriguing issue. 2 coins, 2 alloys, 2 mint mark placements, and 1 famous variety that stands among the best of the entire series. So when we talk about the 1942D Jefferson Nickel, we're really talking about a centerpiece coin. For the advanced collector, the challenge is finding those full steps or securing the D over horizontal D. For the new collector, it's an affordable entry into the world of wartime silver. And for the historian, it's a reminder that even America's pocket change was drafted into the war effort. That's what makes this coin so captivating. It bridges the past and present. Rarity and accessibility, history and collecting. The 1942 Jefferson Nickel is one of the most fascinating dates in the entire series because it represents a turning point in U.S. coinage history. Until 1942, the 5-cent piece had always been made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable and reliable composition that gave the coin its hardness and distinctive color. But in 1942, America was in the early stages of World War II, and nickel was a critical metal needed for armor plating, weapons, and aircraft. To conserve resources, the Mint decided to change the composition of the nickel during the year. That means 1942 is the only date in the series where you can find both regular copper nickel nickels and wartime silver nickels, making it an absolute must for collectors. The early 1942 nickels, struck at Philadelphia and Denver, were the traditional copper-nickel alloy. These look just like earlier Jefferson Nickels with no special mint mark. But later in the year, starting in October, the Mint introduced the new wartime alloy, 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. These silver nickels had a bold, oversized mint mark placed above Monticello's dome on the reverse. That mint mark feature was brand new. It was the first time Philadelphia ever used a P on a coin. So for 1942 alone, you can find nickels with no mint mark in the old alloy, and nickels with a large P or S indicating the new silver wartime alloy. Collectors love this transition because it captures a moment when history literally changed the composition of U.S. coins. In total, over 88 million nickels were struck in 1942, but the split between regular alloy and silver alloy gives the year its complexity. From Philadelphia, both non-silver and silver issues exist. The no mint mark Philadelphia coin is copper nickel, while the 1942 P, with the big P above Monticello, is silver. The Denver Mint struck only copper nickel in 1942, so the 1942 D is the last regular alloy nickel before the switch. San Francisco, on the other hand, only struck the silver wartime version, so the 1942 S is always silver. Now let's talk values. For the regular copper nickel 1942 from Philadelphia, circulated examples are very common, usually worth just $1 to $2 in mint state. Prices start around $15 to $25, but with sharp steps they can rise into the $100 to $300 range. The 1942 D, being the last Denver pre-war alloy issue, is a bit scarcer in high grade. Circulated pieces bring only 2 to 3, but uncirculated examples are valued from $30 to $75, with full steps gems easily topping $400 to $700. The silver wartime nickels are where things get more exciting. The 1942 P, first of the wartime issues, has a strong place in history. In worn condition, they sell for $2 to $4, based mostly on silver content. But in mint state, they quickly rise to $30 to $60, and with full steps, prices can reach $300 to $500. The 1942 S is scarcer still, especially in gem condition. Circulated examples are modest, around $3 to $5, but mint state pieces can command $50 to $100, with full step gems climbing to $500, $800, or even over $1,000 at auction. What makes 1942 particularly fascinating are its varieties. The most famous is the 1942 D over horizontal D, where the mint mark was punched over a misplaced D lying on its side. This error is one of the classic varieties of the Jefferson Nickel series. In circulated grades, it can be worth $50 to $150, but in mint state, prices shoot up dramatically, $500 to $1,000, and with full steps, examples have reached over $3,000. The other big one is the 1942 over 1 overdate, where traces of a 1 show under the 2 in the date. This rare variety is highly prized, especially in high grades, and values range from several $100 to several $1,000 depending on condition and step detail. The story behind these coins is just as compelling as their values. In 1942, America had just entered World War II following Pearl Harbor, and the entire nation was mobilizing. Rationing was introduced, scrap drives collected metal from households, and every piece of material was directed toward the war effort. The change in nickel composition was not a small decision. It was part of a nationwide strategy to make sure the military had enough resources. The silver nickels of 1942 are therefore not just coins, but symbols of sacrifice and adaptation. Collectors today see 1942 as a pivotal year. To build a complete Jefferson Nickel set, you need multiple coins from this single year: the Philadelphia no mint mark copper nickel, the Denver copper nickel, the Philadelphia silver wartime with the large P, and the San Francisco silver wartime with the large S. Add in the famous overdate and over mint mark varieties, and suddenly one year becomes a mini set within itself, full of challenge and history. And when we consider the market, there's really something for every collector. Beginners can pick up a circulated 1942 nickel for just a couple of dollars, while advanced collectors can chase six-figure registry quality, full-step examples or rare varieties worth thousands. That spread of affordability and rarity is what keeps 1940 in the spotlight. So when you hold a 1942 Jefferson Nickel, you're holding a coin that straddles two eras, the last of the traditional copper-nickel alloy, and the first of the wartime, silver issues. It's a coin that captures the reality of a nation at war, adapting even its pocket change to meet the needs of history, from a few dollars in worn condition to thousands for rare varieties. The 1943 Jefferson Nickel is one of the most historic issues in the entire series, because it represents America's shift into wartime coinage. During World War II, nickel was considered a critical material for military production. It was used in armor plating, aircraft parts, and weaponry. To conserve nickel for the war effort, the U.S. Mint made a huge change in 1942, switching the 5-cent piece to a new alloy. From late 1942 through 1945, every Jefferson nickel struck for circulation was made from 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. That means that the 1943 nickel isn't just a coin, it's literally a wartime artifact with precious metal content. Each piece contains about 1/3 silver, which gives it both historical and intrinsic value. What makes the Philadelphia issue stand out in 1943 is that it was the very first coin in U.S. history to carry a large mint mark above Monticello. The big P mint mark over the dome is bold and unmistakable. Before this, Philadelphia coins never had a mint mark at all. For collectors, that makes the 1943 a milestone, the first time a P appeared on a U.S. coin, and of course, it immediately identifies it as a silver wartime issue. Now, when we talk about value, let's start with the general market. In circulated grades, a 1943 nickel is relatively common because over 271 million were struck. That's a huge mintage, and many were saved because people knew they were different. In good or very good, these coins often trade for only $2 to $3, mostly based on silver content. In fine and very fine, you might see them in the $3 to $5 range, with extremely fine pieces selling around $5 to $8. But once you move into uncirculated grades, things get interesting. An average mint state 1943 without any step designation, can range from $15 to $40 depending on luster and marks. In MS64, values are usually around $30 to $50. MS65s are where collectors start to notice premiums, with prices in the $70 to $120 range. Now, when you bring in the full steps designation, the grading standard that looks at the sharpness of Monticello steps, values rise dramatically. MS65 full steps examples can sell for $250 to $400. MS66 FS coins often push into the $600 to $200 range. And in the highest known grades, MS67 FS, some auction results have reached well over $6,000 to $8,000, with superb eye appeal examples topping even higher. Beyond the regular strikes, the 1943 is famous for its varieties. The most dramatic is the 1943 double die obverse, where the date and the word liberty show strong doubling. These are not only scarce but also highly sought after. In mint state, such a variety can bring $1,000 to $2,500, and with full steps the prices can be even more aggressive. Another interesting collectible is the 1943 over 2 variety, where remnants of the 1942 date remain visible. These transitional errors link the wartime alloy to the last of the regular nickel alloy nickels. One of the reasons collectors love the 1943 is the connection to American history. Imagine the context. 1943 was the height of World War II. The United States had entered the conflict just over a year. Earlier, after Pearl Harbor, the entire economy was mobilized for war. Ration books, scrap drives, and material shortages defined everyday life. Even a coin in your pocket reflected that reality. Holding a 1943 P. Nickel meant holding a piece of silver that was deliberately designed to free up nickel for the war. Every strike carried that story, and today, collectors see these nickels as miniature relics of that time. And while it's true that the mintage was high, the survival of pristine examples is lower than you might think. Wartime coins were heavily circulated, often tarnished or darkened by their unusual alloy. Many ended up with dull surfaces or heavy wear. That's why gem examples with brilliant luster and sharp steps are so prized. They're survivors of a time when most coins were spent quickly and worn hard. Even circulated pieces, though, have a certain charm. When you look at the large mint mark over Monticello's dome, you're reminded that this was a completely new feature in U.S. coinage. And the silver content means that no matter what, these coins will always be worth more than face value. Unlike common nickels, they can never truly be worth just 5 cents.